Hey, my beautiful friends. So good to see you. And I want to talk about another aspect of the divine masculine since we're honoring and celebrating that. And that is the ability to take a stand, stand up for yourself, set boundaries, and being able to promote change. And one way of doing that, and it's really required by life, is to take risks. Well, if you don't, look at it this way. You can either sit there stagnant and then life comes along and sweeps you head over heels. Or, again, the divine masculine being proactive, strong and powerful, hardy but not foolhardy. Risk is a way of being able to initiate change so that you can build what you wish to build in that way. And in order for it to work out, is you have to be very clear why you're doing it. So in other words, you need to assess things because there's some people who are reckless when they take risks and then things end up very, very poorly. But if you're really calculating for whatever reason, it could be a situation is untenable, you can't deal with it anymore. Or even there's a dream, there's a chance to run for it. Then the idea of taking risks is a way of embracing the divine masculinity within you, regardless of how you identify. But the wise warrior will sit down and also honor the divine feminine in this. So in other words, the divine masculine brings rational and logical and linear thinking. And for those who are out there, we all have to smile. You can always tell there's a different form of communicating between the masculine and the feminine. It's just the way that it is. But the divine masculine with the logical and the linear, that straight line, helps to give more of an objective view of what is actually happening concretely. But as we know, life is not just, thank God, three-dimensional, solid things. So the divine warrior, the divine masculine, will sit down with the divine goddess, the divine feminine, who brings intuition. Intuition is that knowing. And when one uses true intuition, yes, these things can bring emotions, but there's that knowing that goes beyond. And so the divine masculine, the warrior, will consult always with the goddess, the divine feminine, the divine warrior goddess. And with that, you can assess risk. So the thinking linearly and logically allows for you to assess risk versus reward. What are your capacities? Who and what is around you to begin to build with? And from a logical sense, is this the right time or what's the timing? And of course, the divine feminine, that knowing that goes beyond with that right timing of where to seek or to find things that not be apparently obvious in the beginning. And risk, you're initiating change, right? So you change one thing, everything changes. And so with that, ride out knowingly into the unknown, but it's not completely unknown. I'd like to share with you the idea of, say, if you're going out for a hike into the woods or an expedition, you have an idea where you're going, but you're not going to go willy-nilly. You plan. You have your backup plans. You have your allies that are with you. And so when you initiate the change, follow through. But I'm going to add a caveat as I do. Especially the plans are big or can take a long time. Break it down into small steps. So very much I equate it to scaling a mountain. A large mountain, the average person cannot scale it in a day. They set stages with different camps, with base camp, to be able to rest, to recover, to see, what the shifting environment around them is doing to either stay in the same path or to change. So it is with taking the risk. It's not this bulldog thing. It is when you sit down with this and you're assessing the environment, interacting with who and what is there, and begin to adapt. This is a wisdom that allows for the path to have small successes, to gain strength along the way before you continue onward. So as you go step by step, stage by stage, initiating each time. It's a calculated risk, but you stop and see what the reward is. You stop and see what other effects are happening with you. Ultimately, you will end up towards your goals. And this is what it is. But let's face it, the other thing with risk, when you do this, not everyone or everything is going to be friendly, you know? So you have to keep in mind that risk brings change. Change is not always conflict, but sometimes it happens. So just assess, pick your battles. In other words, there might be folks who are just trolls. We've all run into them, especially nowadays on the internet. Okay, do you really need to engage with that troll? Do you really need to engage with somebody who doesn't understand and is holding you back for either A, their own benefit, and or B, they don't really get what you're doing, so they think they're helping you. So with this, as you notice, it doesn't have to be all out, fisticuffs when it comes to conflict. There could be disputes, there could be discussions. It's to be expected. But what happens is, instead of engaging with the emotions and getting lost in that way, because that's what some people like to do, they like to throw you off balance, to get you move into an emotional tizzy, you lose sight. The Divine Masculine doesn't do that. Staying focused, staying clear is what's needed. And realize this, especially the bigger the change, the bigger the risk usually, you will at some point have to take a leadership position in this risk. It is your life after all. You have to own it, but not own anybody else's things. So you're going to need allies along the way. That's, the Great Spirit made it this way, where we need to be interdependent with each other. And so with that, when it is your turn to lead, realize, get rid of the toxic view of masculinity, of being this stone-faced Superman that can never make a mistake, this toxic perfectionism that has so wounded just about everybody on the planet. Right? True, the gift of the gods and of leadership is being able to see the welfare, the best possible outcome for all people who are invested with you. And so with that, when you show that you can own your feelings but not be ruled by them, that's the key. When you show that you can be truly open-minded without being overtly critical, okay, debating is fine for finer points for understanding. That's how ideas are done, but not overly critical, like you need to be right. And also along the lines where you make it very, I'm going to say transparent, of what everyone's participation is going to be. Everything is transparent. So when you do this and you're consistent with your actions, especially as a leader, it develops an environment where people know that they are safe to be who they are responsible for who they are and what they do, and that interacting with each other, they have to be aware, and it's necessary to do this in a way that is cooperative, not combative. Will it be competitive? Sure, because again, this aspect of the Divine Masculine, especially of leadership, is that divine father, kind of like Zeus or Odin, the All-Father. So you might have the kids competing a little bit. But as long as it doesn't become combative, divisive, or undermining with yourself or others. And let people participate in meaningful ways, when appropriate, in the decision-making process, especially if part of their fate and their trust is in your hands to lead and to guide them. That way, there is a sense of ownership and pride of what is happening, an awareness. This is not just being somebody's slave, that this is being by your side. Again, is there risk? The more people? Yes. And not everything requires a committee. But ultimately, if you're going to get from point A to point B, other people are going to be involved at some level to some degree. And the divine masculine is okay with that. If anything, encourages where everyone contributes so that everyone can grow. And for those who've earned it, to reap the rewards along the way. And for those who have not, that they can find another way. I guess it reminds me that there is a blessing that I give right before I put someone out on Vision Quest. And the final words that they hear from my mouth are, may you receive that which you deserve. Again, divine masculine, if someone has truly done the best that they can, then they smile. If someone has not, then they tend to shiver. So it's not a threatening thing. It's just people receiving what they've earned. I call that fair. And that's the other thing about when you are taking risks. Being fair about yourself, being fair about what you're asking other people to do, and honest about what the rewards are going to be at the end of this, so that they too can decide if the risk is worth their reward in this way. So that's what I wanted to share with you, is that it's never easy. Risk is that consciously walking into the unknown, purposefully upsetting the apple cart. But that's okay. This is part of the divine warrior, of strategically and pinpointing where and when to push the norm, especially if it is no longer useful, especially if it is unnecessarily limiting. Because with this is opening the breath of life, clearing the clutter of the old. So risk is worth it. It's worth it. It doesn't mean you have to be risking everything all the time. But, depending what it is, the greater risk, usually the greater the impact. And I do like, the saying that I said, that, what you're willing to risk shows you what you value. So sit down. Think about the things that you want to change. What is the inherent risk in that? Even if it's to tweak things to improve. Again, remember, it's not always upsetting the apple cart. And then with that, when you say, and you take a step back, again, that analytical mind of why are you doing it? What are you standing up for? What are your values? You can also see your motivations. And once you can articulate that, it helps to keep you on track, especially when deciding who and what gets involved and how to explain it to them. And so with that, my wonderful friends, if you found this video useful, please give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. I always appreciate it. It helps me a lot to spread the positivity. And I'd love to hear your comments below about, what risks are you contemplating and taking or have taken? And what was the result? And again, remember, if you choose wisely, calculated risks can bring wonderful rewards. It's worth, sometimes, most times, taking the bull by the horns and taking and participating with crafting your fate. This is why Creator put us here, is to dance with the universe. So with that, I thank you so much. Wanishi, bright blessings till we speak again.